Hi, my name is Dr. Frederick Edward Fabella, and I will be discussing the foundations of quantitative research, part 3, identifying the problem. Okay, so let us begin. So, if you recall our discussion in part 2 about the variables, so once you have identified the variables you wish to study, you can now proceed to identifying the problem. Okay, so you have variable 1, and then you have variable 2, and you want to establish whether or not there is a relationship between variable 1 and variable 2, the problem that you want to come up with will usually take the form of a question. So you want to ask whether there is an influence exerted by variable 1 on variable 2. Okay? So since you're trying to figure out whether one variable influences the other, the question can usually be phrased in terms of a difference or a relationship. Okay, so these are the basic forms of how you identify your problem. Now, let's discuss difference first. Okay, consider this example wherein you have gender as the variable, and then you also have math test scores as your second variable. And you want to find out whether gender influences the math test scores of individuals. Okay, so how will you come up with an idea to study this? Okay, so first what you do is you divide your group into males and females, and then of course you give both groups the same math test. And of course, there will be scores yielded. And what you do is you compare the scores. And once you have the scores, you can ask whether or not there is a difference. Okay. So going back to our variables, whether gender influences math test scores, you can now identify your problem by formulating it this way. Is there a significant difference in the math test scores of males and females? All right, so that's our demonstration of difference. Okay, so let's now proceed to relationship. All right, now let's consider another example wherein your first variable happens to be English test scores, and then your second variable are science test scores. Okay, so you want to find out whether English test scores of people affect their science test scores. Okay, so how will you come up with the idea of testing that? So what you do is you get a group of people. Of course, that group will have members. Let's say your group has 28 members, and then what you do first is you give that group an English test, and then after the English test, you give that group the science test, and then of course the English test will yield English test scores, and the science test will also yield science test scores. Okay, so now you have the English test scores and the science test scores. So what can you do next? So your English test scores and your science test scores, try to see if when you have high English test scores, the science test scores are also high. Okay, or whether the English test scores, if they are high, it influences the science test scores by yielding lower scores. Okay, so that's a relationship. Okay, so going back to our variables, you have English test scores and science test scores. You can now formulate your problem this way. Okay, is there a significant relationship between English test scores and math test scores? Okay, so once you have identified your problem, it now becomes your statement of the problem. Okay, for your first example, you have, is there a significant difference in the math test scores of males and females? And for your second example, is there a significant relationship between English test scores and science test scores? Okay, so that ends my discussion on identifying the problem. If you want to stay updated with my upcoming lectures, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Prof. Eric F. Thank you very much.